Hey everyone, welcome to the Convos with Anita Santiago podcast. I am your host, Anita Santiago. Please like, review, share the podcast on all the major platforms. Don't forget to check out the website, lifeconvos.com. And if you want to reach out to me directly with ideas or comments about the show, you can reach me at convoscws.com. Thanks for coming on by. And let me tell you what we're talking about today. I've been on this relationship kick. I don't know what that's about, but here we are. So, last couple of episodes, we've been examining just like different components of relationships. And so I came across an interesting conversation at the gym this morning. Shout out to Team Workout Heads. You guys are amazing. And it got me to thinking. That's what I'm always doing is thinking. So, what are we talking about today? Are you weaponizing your relationships? And, if you are weaponizing your relationships, that's not a good thing, but let's talk about it. Let's go a little deeper. So, what I mean by weaponizing relationships is, are you saying or doing things intentionally or unintentionally that put one person against another in your relationship? Now, if you ask most people, hey, do you weaponize your relationships? The answer is going to be, of course I don't. I'm trying to come to an understanding or build closeness or have a better relationship. Why in the world would I do that? And I think the issue with this topic is that in most cases, when a relationship is weaponized, it's not only is it unintentional, but it may not be recognized by the person that's doing the behavior or saying the things. I really feel like nobody intentionally weaponizes their relationship, but I feel like it happens a lot. And I feel like that's where some of the dynamics that people get frustrated over in relationships come from. Now, I don't have any data on this particular topic, and I haven't researched this particular topic. This is kind of like observation from being a therapist and listening to conversations and talking to people. And it just really occurred to me, this might really be something to bring up. So in the two previous episodes on relationships, talked about, do we believe in relationships fundamentally as a society? And then the next episode after that, we jumped into understanding the difference between relationship needs and wants. And now we're talking about whether or not people may weaponize their relationships. So what does that look like? I feel like weaponizing your relationship looks like doing and saying things that are really detrimental to the other person and or puts you in a power play against the other person. How does that happen? I think first and foremost, the number one way that people weaponize their relationships is communication. The expectations that we have around gender roles and relationship roles often lead to very strong differences of opinion. For example, if you go on social media, especially TikTok, there are so many videos about this dynamic of what a man is supposed to do in a relationship, what a woman is supposed to do in a relationship. And I was watching a video and this guy said something, should have wrote his username down, but I didn't, sorry. And he said something very interesting. And it went something like this. He said, you know, women complain about men not opening up to them. But when they do open up, they either get arguing or disagreeing or not a safe space where they can really bring something up that's bothering them. And what that will inadvertently do is shut the man down. And he was saying that once that happens, there will very likely not be an effort to bring up something again, because the signal that's been given by the other person is that this is not a welcome conversation. And I thought about that and I said, well, being on the other side of that, being a woman, if you're bringing up something to me, am I listening for understanding? Am I listening to understand why this thing bothers you? Or am I trying to convince you that you're seeing it wrong? And I've listened to conversations where women have made statements something along the lines like this: I'm just trying to get him to understand. I'm just trying to get him to see why he should talk about his emotions, or why he should do this, or why he should do that. And like I've said in my other podcast, there's nothing wrong with having a way that you move, or a criteria, or standards. But when you start to demand or expect or strongly persuade another person that their viewpoint has to change to what your viewpoint is, that's a power move. That's a power move. And you may not realize that at the time. And what's the end result? The end result is one person or the other person feels unheard, unwelcome to be their open self, and takes a posture that I'm not going to be open anymore. Another thing that I've heard as far as communication, and this came straight from the conversation this morning, when men feel like there's something bothering them and they want to bring it up, and their partner goes into the list of things that they're not doing right. And the interesting part of the conversation was, like, the guys were saying, if you had issues with me, why didn't you bring them up before? Why is it when I bring up something, you're bringing up something? And again, I am not saying that people should be blamed. What I'm saying is that we often don't understand what we're actually doing. We often don't step back and look at what is transpiring in the moment so that we can correct what we're doing and listen for understanding to better support our partners. So I'm not saying in every single situation that, oh, well, if a man brings up something that's difficult for his partner, she doesn't have a right to say anything or respond to it. I'm not saying that. But the question is, who's listening for understanding? Men are very different from women. Men are not typically socialized to be emotional. They may feel emotion and they may understand emotion, but in a general sense, in the West, men are socialized to um, not display emotion, not think with emotion, but to think with logic. That's a general statement. That's a general statement. Some men are nurturers by nature, but that doesn't take away from the fact that men are socialized not to be emotional. On the other hand, women are socialized to be emotional. Everything that we're taught that's valuable centers on emotion. And so you have these two very dynamic, distinct perspectives coming together in a relationship. So I have heard men say, well, I can't get her to understand the reasoning behind X, Y, and Z. That's because women are socialized emotionally, and sometimes it's really difficult for us to see the logic behind X, Y, and Z. And women will say, well, if I could just get him to get in touch with his emotions and understand emotionally what he's going through, same thing. Men are not typically socialized to be emotional. So you're trying to get a person to do something that's not natural for them. I'm not saying in either case the woman or the man couldn't pivot, but that's what happens when you listen for understanding. When you're communicating for understanding, then there's a moment where you say, okay, I'm not really understanding you. So maybe you can break it down for me. Maybe you can help me see what you're seeing. Help me see what you're seeing so that I can better understand and better support you. That goes back to the question I asked a couple of episodes ago. Do we believe in relationships? And if we believe in relationships, if I believe in relationships and you believe in relationships, then our behavior when we're talking to each other should reaffirm this relationship is important to me. So I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that I hear you, to make sure that I understand what the issue is, and then to come together with you on a solution. I just really, I that is it in a nutshell. Like, communicating for understanding is one of the things we lack. And I think the communication for I need to let you know what's up, or let me let you know what's going on with me, is not a posture of understanding. That is a demand. I need you to unprogram yourself so that you can understand everything that's going on with me. And again, I'm not saying that other person can't have insight, but what I'm saying is that the posture of that stance does not scream, I value you, I value this relationship, and I need us to come to understanding. So when it comes to weaponizing relationships, if the communication isn't open, honest, safe, then it's going to be problematic. And safe communication is a big thing right now. People are not doing well at managing emotions on either side, men or women or otherwise. We don't really always do the best at allowing ourselves to feel the emotion and handling it in a mature way. Relationships take a lot of communication, daily, active communication. There has to be understanding. If you're communicating, but you're assuming, or you're communicating and there's a lack of understanding, there's going to be more issues and more problems. And that's where you get this dynamic of frustration. So when you communicate, if you're not communicating for understanding or to promote understanding, and as partners, you're not creating a safe space, meaning you're non-judgmental, you let the person get the whole thought out before you interject. You really try to understand where they're coming from in the context of their experiences, not in the context of your own. By doing that, you can really, really reduce the potential of weaponizing the communication. Because once communication goes south, a lot of other things in the relationship go south as well. So if the communication is not good, it's not open, there's no safety, then other parts of the relationship also will shut down. And then you get in a whole host of other problems. So again, communication, the number one way that sometimes people weaponize issues and emotions in the relationship. And the way to not do that is to have active listening, open communication, and safe spaces. And everyone has to be committed to um, making sure those things are always there. In just think about how many times, if you're in a relationship, how many times you communicate with the other person in a day. So being open and honest, actively listening, and creating a safe space is something that is a continual thing. It is ongoing. And both people have to be creating that environment or committed to creating it at the same intensity with the same effort for it to work. Relationships are a lot of work. They really are. So communication to me is the number one area where we see, words, statements, criticisms, and judgments that hurt. Weaponizing the relationship means that people are getting hurt. And that's no one's intention. You didn't get in a relationship to hurt the other person. You didn't get in a relationship to be hurt. But when things are weaponized, that's exactly what happens. So attending to communication in a way that's meaningful, that supports the relationship is very, very, very important. Um, another way that I feel relationships may be weaponized, not all the time, but it could be, is the lack of creating a shared vision, shared purpose, shared movement, shared goals. And again, we have this concept of relationships, I feel, especially in the United States, that person meets person, spectacular wedding, beautiful dresses, amazing views and venues, and nobody has taken the time to sit down and say, do we have the energy to make this work? Do we have the level of commitment to make this work? The wedding, the marriage, the commitment ceremony is just the first step. The work is every day when you wake up, recommitting, reaffirming, doing those actions and behaviors that strengthen the relationship. That's really hard to do when no one knows what the program is. So when people get into committed relationships, well, it may, you may talk about it. It may make sense from your vantage point, but where are you going? Why are you, why get together? In the famous words of Tina Turner, what's love got to do with it? Love is great. Love is amazing. But if that's all you have, uh, this can make it very difficult for the relationship to get traction and forward motion. Because if the only shared thing is love, there's no vision for where you want to be in the future, kids, finances, goals, occupations, education. There's no shared goals and there's no shared purpose. How do you know you're on the same page? How do you know that you're together? And that shared vision and that shared purpose, or the shared thing that you're doing, creates closeness and intimacy. As a therapist, I feel like it's very hard to maintain relationships that don't have something shared in common. Even if that's, we both want a family, we both want a robust life, we want to travel the world, whatever that thing is that you decided this was the person that it made sense to do that with and accomplish that with and to live your life out with. Yeah, I mean, what do you do when you don't have a shared goal? So I go to work, you go to work, I pay bills, you pay bills. What do we do? Like, what do we do? That shared goal might be taking a trip once every 12 months. Okay, every year we're going to take a trip. We're going to take an amazing trip. That's going to be our shared goal. It doesn't have to be a lot of goals. It doesn't have to be a whole, laundry list, but there has to be something shared. If a person wants to open a business, okay, I may not be good at business. I may not know a lot about business, but let me get up to speed so that I can support you. I can help you. Or at the very minimum, when you're talking to me, I have an understanding of the topics that you're bringing up, and I have an understanding of why this concerns you. Even if I'm not helping in the business, that's kind of participating in that shared vision. So one person wants to have a business. The other person says, okay, let me learn about this. Let me learn about this industry. Let me learn about what it looks like. So when we have a conversation, you know that I'm all in trying to push your vision forward. I feel like in a lot of cases, people get together because it feels like the right thing to do. I don't have any data for that. I don't have any research for that. And of course, I'm not saying that's everyone. Of course, there are plenty of people out there that have great relationships, that are doing well, that are that have shared vision and shared things that they do. But it seems to me more often than not, when people are discussing the difficulties in maintaining a relationship, well, you know, do you have a shared vision at all? Maybe you got into a relationship because you're looking for marriage and the other person is just looking for arm candy. I don't know. This is possible. Um, and beyond that, if there's no discussion of, okay, once we make this commitment, what do we feel our goals are? In the episode I did about examining our relationship to relationships, I talk about historically how relationships were not based in this idea of a romantic love. They were based in a need to survive. In a lot of cases, you grew your own food, you raised your own animals, and you had children in large families that allowed families to do that, to survive, to be able to grow the amount of food that they needed and be self-sufficient. And so this idea of romantic love, historic, when you look at it from a historical standpoint, is fairly recent. And so if there's no discussion, if you get together with a person and you decide that there's going to be a commitment, but there's never an understanding or a discussion about what our goals are, what our dreams are, what our hopes are, and to discover what's shared and what's not, then you've created an expectation of a relationship that's just going to somehow be good. Going back to my earlier statement, relationships are work. I have to, if I'm in a relationship, I have to understand, like, what am I contributing to? What are we doing together? Like, yes, in relationships, people do need an individual side. They need a side that is themselves. But the purpose of relationship is the coming together in the shared space. And again, I think this is an area that people don't have discussions about before committing to the relationship. So in my mind, what happens for a lot of people is they meet, they hit it off, they enjoy each other's company. Hey, let's be in a committed relationship. But there's never a discussion about what are your goals? What are, where do you see yourself? Do you want children? Do you not want children? You want to live in a different state, live in a different country, get XYZ degree or training. Okay, so now we can have that discussion to see if we even have anything that's shareable. And I wonder for people who struggle in relationships, how much of a difference that would make. So again, not having shared vision, shared purpose, how does that weaponize the relationship? Well, it's a constant back and forth, tug of war between priorities and where we're going. I want to go to the left and you want to go to the right. I'm adamant that you can't go to the right and you shouldn't go to the right. And this is why you shouldn't go to the right and you should go to the left. And the other person is like, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. The left is not where we need to go. We need to go to the right. And let me tell you about what's over here on the right. And if you had any sense, you'd be going to the right. That's how the lack of shared vision and purpose weaponizes the relationship. The people involved in the relationship start to get in a tug of war about what's the most important priority. Well, you don't treat my priorities as important. Well, you don't treat my priorities as important. That's because we never sat down and talked about it. We never established what the priority was. And now, 5, 10, 15 years later, I'm expecting the other person to just all of a sudden know where I'm going without considering, is that where they wanted to go? Back to communication for understanding. Because really, if you're having these discussions about shared spaces and priorities, but you're not having discussions to understand, how can you have the information you need to make a decision on whether or not you have shared purpose or vision or goals with the individual that you're with? And yes, that can be very problematic and lead to people feeling disconnected. I don't feel like anyone sees I don't feel like my partner sees my priorities as important. And maybe they don't because their priorities were different from yours from the beginning, but the conversation was never had. And that's, you know, another area that needs to be attended to. And then I would say, the last piece of this, are you weaponizing your relationships? The last piece of this is effort. And I think it's the foundational piece, right? Because if both people are not making the effort to communicate, to be together in meaningful ways, then what you get is a lot of what I hear every day when people are talking about relationship challenges. Effort is a very powerful experience. And even if your partner doesn't get it right all the time, let's say for the sake of argument, the communication is a little rough. We don't really know what we share in common, but the fact that the other person consistently and genuinely makes the effort to try is something that's tangible and that you can see in your relationships. And let's go back to communication. So if communication is shut down, what's going to be the effort from either party? If I don't feel there's a shared vision or shared space, what's going to be my effort to figure that out? Effort is absolutely required on a daily basis to create the platform and foundation that supports the relationship. And when you don't have that, well, it could be weaponized. And what does that look like? Well, you don't make the effort, so I'm going to go do what I want to do. I don't know what you're doing, so I'm going to do what I want to do. It's all about me. I'm living my best life. See that hashtag all over the internet all the time. I don't feel heard or seen, so therefore I'm just going to establish my priorities and needs, and I'm just going to roll that way. And then what does that do for the other person? That makes them feel some type of way. And, they may say, well, I see you doing everything that you want to do. You're not talking to me. You're not communicating. I don't know what's going on. Well, let me just call my girlfriends up and let's go do whatever we do that makes me feel good. And you see how all those things link together? The communication not being there. There's no sense of shared purpose or vision or goals. And that leads to a decrease in effort, which means that nobody's working as hard as they probably should be to make it work. Again, are you weaponizing your relationships? The answer is probably not intentionally, but you may be doing these things unintentionally, or you may not be aware of your role. And remember, when you have a relationship, there are two people. Everybody's contributing to the solution or the problem. And that's the hard part. That's hard for us to hear, but it's absolutely true. You have a relationship, everyone's contributing to the solution or the problem. So if you're having difficulties establishing or maintaining relationships, it's not always the other people. Have you done some self-reflection to understand how you may be contributing to the problems. And what are you willing to do to change it? If you're not a good communicator, what are you willing to do to improve your communication? If you're not good at talking about your needs and wants and where you see yourself going, maybe you need to practice so that you can articulate that effectively with other people. So again, it's just really something to think about, not blaming men, not blaming women, not blaming partners for every single thing that's going wrong, but really taking the time to say, how are we supporting what we want? If I want a good, strong, nurturing, fulfilling relationship, what am I doing to create that space? Intentionally, consistently, on the daily. Before you get to the part where my partner is not doing X, Y, and Z. Because, maybe if they see a little bit more effort on your part, maybe they'll pick up their effort. Because if the vision is shared, that's what should happen. I'm just saying. Thank you guys for letting me bring that topic up because I just really felt like it needed to be said. So thank you for stopping in to the Combos with Anita Santiago podcast. Please like, share, and review the podcast on all the major platforms. Don't forget to pop over to the website, lifecombos.com. And also, if you want to reach me directly, you can email me at convoscws@gmail.com. Thanks for stopping by and happy listening.